Okay. Well, hello everybody. How's it going? Welcome to 2025. So, all the snow has melted, right? It's no longer the frozen tundra of Houston, Texas. Sorry I had to delay it for a week, but when something happens once every 30 years, like 4 or 5 inches of snow, I want to stay off the roads. But did y'all have a good time in the snow? Everybody have a good time in the snow? I did. I built a snowman. Anybody? Tony, you built a snowman? You built a snowman, Tony?
Well, we couldn't get out.
So my wife was like, go out there and build a snowman. I'm like, all right. So I built a snowman. Anyway, last time we were here, I had a Kyle Tucker bobblehead saying that Kyle Tucker was in spirit with us all last month, because that was right after he got, I guess, you know, I should have brought a Ryan Presley bobblehead today. So now that Ryan Presley and Tucker are teammates again. So, but that leaves the question. What in the world is Bregman going to do?
Stay put.
Do you have any idea what Alex Bregman is going to do?
Stay home.
Stay put. He's coming home?
Stay home.
Well, I don't know. So I just hope he's probably upset with Boris or somebody. But hopefully they figure it out soon. Okay. Well, we have, is William Moreland here? You on? I thought he was our member from last month, but he's on for this month. Chris, our normal audio video guy. By the way, I'm Joe Thompson. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mike, if I didn't introduce myself. I'm Joe Thompson, by the way. All right. New year, new mess ups, right?
I want to point out that at our last meeting, we decided that Bregman wasn't worth that much money.
All right, our last meeting, Mike said Bregman is not worth that kind of money. You still agree?
Yeah. Not alone, apparently.
So you're okay? You don't like the idea of Jose Altuve playing left field? Bregman comes back? Biggio do that?
He
played center.
Yeah, okay, all right.
They used to put solid.
played it in work.
Played, right. Okay, so last month we had Kyle Camberby, the director of marketing for the Hooks, who was with us, and he was a great guest. He actually won the trivia contest, but he's not going to be with us tonight. So he sent an email saying we could somehow try to work out the trivia contest. So we're going to see how that goes at the end of the meeting. If it works, if it doesn't, there's audio involved. So it's a pretty unique twist on the trivia contest. So we're going to see how that goes. So we'll work on that. We're not going to have a February 1st SABR Day event because our SABR Day event was this last Saturday at Dyken Park. Okay? How many of y'all actually went to Fan Fest? What'd you think? A lot of people? Surprised by the amount of people or no? Or
Shocking.
shocking?
It is. I mean, there are thousands of people. I was surprised.
Okay. All right. We had a booth right next to this big long line of people who got a free dugout photo or something like that. So we had people pretty much for a couple of hours just going past it. We were giving out cards. We were talking to people. I had a YouTube thing with Astrodome memories going. So, you know, ironically, a lot of people have no idea, especially young kids. They've never heard of the Astrodome. So I feel like this year we got a lot of work to do. All right. A lot of kids they've never heard of the Astrodome, except for that big building that sits right next to where the Texans play. Okay, so we passed out baseball cards. We had a lot of people sign up. They wanted information about SABR. I shared that with the leadership committee this afternoon. And so we're going to see if we get some more members. That really was our SABR Day. We all sat around, talked a lot of baseball all day. for Lou's sake, I put a YouTube thing on for the, 1980 World Series Astros versus Phillies Game 5. That happened in the Dome, so he could watch that. Then, Lou started watching the game. He wasn't talking to anybody. Because Lou, of course, is a Phillies fan. So, we had to do something, but it worked out. But there were a lot of people. Now, we had the Bill Gilbert winter meeting out at Texas State in January, early this month. It was a great day full of a lot of good guests and things like that. And Gilbert says hello to all of you. And if you've never had a chance to go to the winter meeting, they have it every January, the first or second week. So it's really a great meeting. It's all day talking baseball, some great guests, things like that. So you want to go plan for next year. So I can only imagine. I made the announcement that as a chapter, all this year, we're going to be celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Astrodome. So all year, this year, we're going to have guests. We're going to have newsletters, newsletter articles. We're going to have memories from all of you. I'm going to ask each and every one of you to share an Astrodome story. That's one thing I did at FanFest. A lot of people have an Astrodome story. I met one woman who worked in the concession stand, and I kid you not, she said this: I served a hot sandwich to Ray Charles. And then she was like, hey, I have a picture here of me and Elvis. So I'm like, wow, okay, there we go. So a lot of people have an Astrodome story. So I figure if anybody has an Astrodome story, it's all of you. So hopefully you have one here coming up soon. All right. Wow. I don't know. You're gonna just die. All right. For some reason my agenda died here. There we go. I apologize. We have technical difficulties a lot today. All right, so we have a newsletter coming out at the end of the month, right, Tony? You and Scott want to talk a little bit about that? When do we think the newsletter is going to come out?
End of the week,
The end of this week.
end of the week, end of the month.
Do we have articles? Do we have enough articles for the newsletter?
Got yours, we're waiting for yours.
Okay.
Hold the press.
Hold the press, waiting for mine. All right. Now, Herb, are we ready to go for the annual Hall of Fame vote? You want to say something and you want to pass it out so people can vote? You want to say something real fast or?
Yeah. I thought we already voted. Did you really vote?
Yeah, we talked about it, but
Yeah.
But you didn't vote online, first time. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing kind of a combination of the online vote and for anybody that did not vote online, I'm gonna pass out a ballot for you to be able to vote tonight. We'll add it into what everybody did online. So, got about 20 of these sheets here. I don't know. There's probably less than 20 that hopefully that have not voted online. So, we're going to use the same process that the baseball writers do. You can vote up to 10 people. And we'll accumulate all that information. And I guess you're going to do that calculation. Yeah, so once you vote, get it over to Patrick and he'll accumulate that, and then we'll announce it at the end. I would say let's try to get the ballots to them by 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm gonna pass out the ballots. If you need one, go ahead and take one and just pass it around.
all right, thanks a lot, Herb. I don't know what's going on with this. Anyway, well, I tell you what, better late than never. I'm sure all of you have a lot of Astrodome questions that you'd like to ask to our very special guest, Mike Acosta. Mike is a longtime friend of the chapter. For as long as I've been a member of this chapter, I remember Mike being a member, at least being a guest or a member or something like that. Mike has always had a connection with our chapter. So I figured when it comes to opening up the celebration of the Dome, there was no one better, as far as I'm concerned, no one better alive to talk about the Dome than Mike Acosta. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. It's all you, Mike.
Thanks, Joe.
Sure. 3 hours. That's perfect. Perfect. I know how passionate you are about that. Dome.
I was gonna say, we got about 3, we'll be done about 10:30 with this part.
That's fine.
No, thanks, everybody. It's really good to see everybody, back out here. I haven't seen some of y'all in a long while. I think, biscuits are done. I guess that's what that means. I'm Mike Acosta. I am a Astrodome historian. For those of you who I've never met before, I was the former team historian with the Houston Astros I was with them for 22 years, not as long as Dirk was with the organization, but I was there for 22 years and was the person in charge of everything, history, a lot of the historical branding and everything. I helped design uniforms. In fact, I saw somebody has a tin over here, an Astrodome tin. That, there it is right there, Mike Crosby has a tin. That was one of my first projects I ever worked on back in my first year in the Astrodome. And well, those words I wrote. Yeah, yeah. But so anyway, the Astrodome has been it's a lifelong study of mine. And I've been really, really blessed to be part of the Houston Astros organization, a lot of other special projects. I'm also on the board of the Astrodome Conservancy, who is attempting to work with Harris County and the Texans and the rodeo. I've had my knees deep into the Astrodome project over the years. We've been navigating it. I've done designs for the Astrodome. I think maybe some of y'all have seen a couple of the models that I've brought in here over the course of, I would say, probably the better part of the last 10 years, right? And so I've been walking through the Astrodome in the years. Now I realize, and last year in 2024, I realized that it was 25 years since the Astros left the Dome on October 9th of 1999. That was the very last game. And it wasn't a real good game, right? Because we got knocked out of the playoffs, or the team got knocked out of the playoffs. But I realized it's now 2024. You know, it's like I started with the team when I was 24. Now here I am near 50. Now I am 50. I just turned 50 and nothing has been done. and that's for a native Houstonian and somebody who has put a lot of energy into the Astrodome over the years. I realized, you know what, I should put a logo together celebrating a silver anniversary of nothing. And I did, and I was gonna put it out on social media, but my better half, Elizabeth over there, she said, Mike, she actually said, Michael, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, because it's gonna be all over the internet, someone's gonna, so I didn't do it. But I did create a 60th anniversary logo, because together, we have a media company, a media news and features company called Houston City Beat, HoustonCityBeat.com. And so I'm using that platform to create, Joe was talking about putting stories together. Well, I put together a TV program called Astrodome Reimagined, which is a Houston legacy. And so I've already brought a couple of people on. I'm reaching out to more people. Dirk, I'm gonna reach out to you sometime here real soon. And we're gathering stories of people who worked at the Astrodome. You don't have to be a former player. You don't have to be the manager of the Astros or a franchise person of the Astros. It can be somebody who had some kind of special attachment. The first one that I did was a gentleman named Michael Williamson, who is in Colorado, and his father passed away building the Astrodome. He fell from the roof of the Astrodome as a construction worker. And he always wanted to share this story. And it was so like, it was really like, even today, this guy turns into the teenager on screen while I'm asking him these questions. He said it was the worst day of his life. It took him 3 years to go to an event in the Astrodome. And every time he went into the Astrodome, one of his first events was the game of the century, the UCLA game. I think he said that was his first event. And then he went to Astros games after that. His mother never went to anything in the dome. And every time he went in there, he looked up at the center of the roof and he saluted his father. He was a World War II veteran. So there are stories like that that are out there. And I'm trying to gather those and put them together. And what we do on Houston City Beat is we give voices to people who normally don't have those voices out there in media. So I decided this year, with the 60th anniversary, we're going to have a program called Astrodome Reimagined, which examines a Houston legacy. And that's really what it is. Today is actually a really cool day, too. We put out a post about it earlier today. 8 years ago, back in 2017, the Astrodome actually became a state antiquities landmark. And that means it has legal protection against demolition in the state of Texas. It stands right there with the Alamo. It stands right there with the state capitol, Cotton Bowl, and a host of other historic buildings. No alterations can be done without a permit from the Texas Historical Commission. Whether anybody agrees with that or not, that's what the state has said it is, and that's what I stand by. Happily. But the Astrodome, like I said, over the past 25 years, now we're in 2025, over that time period, I put together a PDF here of my visits to the Astrodome when I was doing research. I took thousands of photos in the Astrodome since the Astros moved out, since the rodeo moved out, since they started doing, asbestos abatement, moving out, clearing out rooms, taking down false ceilings, removing carpet, and really bringing the building to what I consider 1964, which is what it looked like back when it was under construction, about 1964. So there's really not a lot of seats in there. So I realized that I had 20 years of photographs, and that catches up with you really fast, because I started taking these pictures back in 2004, right before we hosted the All-Star game here in Houston at Minute Maid Park, now Daikin Park. And so I have put these in the collection. And it's what I started to discover was it tells a story. And I love telling stories. I love telling stories about the Astrodome. I wrote a 100-page book on the redevelopment of the Astrodome. It wasn't for sale. It was given to stakeholders who are involved with the development of the Astrodome. Maybe I showed it here one time, but I decided that now's the time to start showing some of those images, because a lot of people don't see. And I will say that the Astrodome is probably, no, it's not probably, it is the most politicized thing that I have seen in Harris County and the Houston metropolitan area in the past 25 years. It really is. It's something that is full of misinformation. It's full of politics. It's full of people who feel that they can't speak because they don't know enough information on it. It's full of politicians who don't have the leadership, the fortitude to think forward, to do big things in Houston. There is a lot of stuff colliding, and the Astrodome has kind of been, in a way, a victim of its own invention.
There's a lot going on. Is anyone missing a side Caesar salad? No one's missing a side Caesar? Are you?
You still have mine.
Your big one.
Yeah.
It's coming, but no side Caesars. Sorry about that.
No, you're okay. So when the dome was built, I think some of us know, and like Joe was saying, there's a lot of youngsters out there now that don't know the Astrodome. They never experienced it. I had access. I made sure I made sure to take my children in it to show them what it was like. So that way they would have an impression of what Dad was working on and why Dad liked this place so much. And I took pictures of them when they were little and they were a little bit older. It's been several years now since they've been in there. But I also realized that a lot of people across Houston, they never had that experience. There's been two events, 2015 and 2018, where the county reopened the dome. And you saw 25, 30,000, 40,000 people waiting hours just to get in the dome, to walk down that ramp in what was center field, go down to the floor and look up again. And because it's the only structure of its kind in the United States that looks like that. The only other place that is remotely close is the Louisiana Superdome. The same engineering firm that worked on the Astrodome, Walter P. Moore, also did the Superdome. And the Superdome is a little bit taller. It's really not much wider than I know that Louisiana, anybody from Louisiana in here? No, I know they like to brag on it, but the Astrodome cannot fit in the Superdome. It cannot. It's not structurally possible. The Superdome actually is taller because they jammed a lot more seats in a smaller space. That's why. The span of the Superdome is 670 feet, and the span of the Astrodome is 642, difference of 38 feet, which is circle and circle. That's a 19-foot concourse. That's not even the size of this room. So it's not possible, but that was part of the promotion of the Superdome. They wanted to outdo, I have books that kind of describe the Superdome back in the 70s, and they say that Texas Dome. They don't even call it the Astrodome. So, but that one is still going strong, right? Because, you know, they had a hurricane over there, really nearly destroyed the building in the hurricane back in 2005. But they renovated it, and they're still renovating it. They're still expanding it into, you know, this modern day type of stuff. But in Houston, we went elsewhere. There was a desire to go downtown back in the 90s because that was the popular trend. Everybody was building downtown, started in Baltimore. A lot of people know that here, and Colorado and Cleveland and those places. And Houston wanted to do the same thing. And Drayton thought, you know, Drayton McLean thought, that's a great idea. Let's do it. I have so much development. And now it's 20 years later, Discovery Green is what it is. But they were hoping it was going to be within 2 years after Enron Field opened up. Development of a city is far different than just putting a stadium downtown. But that's what happened here. And then with the Oilers leaving, the new organization came in. They didn't want to play in the dome. Bob McNair wanted his own place. And that's par for the course with team owners, right? They want to make their own mark. They want to leave their own legacy. He wanted a whole new stadium. So that left this place in limbo. There was, in the early 2000s, there was an effort. It was an organization. I believe they were originally based out of New Jersey. They called themselves the Astrodome Redevelopment Corporation. They signed a 5-year exclusive contract with Harris County to redevelop the dome into a massive hotel. The big logistic that they did not think about was the tri-party agreement that has always been in place with Harris County. And to further explain it to you, I don't want to get too nerdy. Y'all mind if I talk about that?
Do it, please.
The Astros were the master leaseholder of Astrodome. Okay, when the complex was being built, you had Colt Stadium there on the north end where the center is today. Out there, it's parking lot, part of it's covered by the NRG Center. And then the dome was built a few hundred yards to the south. You had that built, and you built Astro Hall. Fast forward, now they're building a new stadium. They put the center there, and the complex, the dynamics of the complex kind of changed. And with the Astros moving out, they were no longer the master leaseholder of what was now called Reliant Park at the time, before they changed it to NRG Park. So they created something called the Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation. That took the place of the Houston Astros as the landlord for NRG Park. So when you hear that term in the news, they control the master lease. They're the representative of Harris County, just like the Houston Astros used to be. And so they work with the tenants, and the tenants that are there are the football team, which became the Texans, who play at the stadium next door, and the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, who have been there since 1956. Now, when the rodeo moved to the Astrodome complex in the 60s, they paid for the Astro Hall 100%. They paid for it, they gave it to the county, and the county put it to use. So that way the rodeo could move from the damn Houston Coliseum in downtown, they could move to the Astrodome complex, and they could exponentially grow into this massive organization that they are today. Somewhere along the line, the rodeo has lost sight of their legacy. And so they, and in plain terms, what I will tell you now is that the rodeo doesn't want the Astrodome there anymore. That is the flat truth. If you don't hear that in the media, they're just not saying it. And that's because the rodeo will not publicly say it. But I will tell you that behind the scenes, there are plans, and I will give you, are you okay with opinions?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because let's turn this, that's the informative storytelling. Now we're gonna go to the editorial. So the editorial is that I feel that by summertime, we're gonna see a master plan for NRG Park that's gonna have a scenario where the Astrodome is redeveloped as a sports arena with about half of it full. People can go back in, walk the same ramps, they'll put new seats back in and enjoy the Astrodome sort of like we've always known it, okay? With some renovation work, there's a lot of codes that need to be brought up, you need a new certificate of occupancy, plumbing work, electrical work, you know, just, and the building is 60 years old this year. Then you're gonna also see a consensus combination of what is now about 3 or 4 plans that's gonna leave a hole in the ground. And it's gonna eliminate the Astrodome completely. And they're gonna put these other structures around in between the stadium, with all these nice fancy, you know, you've seen it in the Woodlands, you've seen it in Katy, La Centera, Market Street in the Woodlands, Vintage Park in Cypress, you know, you see these little town centers that they build, and you're gonna see a town center type of thing that interconnects the existing buildings, also building a brand new 17,000 to 20,000 seat arena for the rodeo for their horses and everything else, and also other concerts they can bring to them. And I think what's gonna happen is that Harris County is going to eventually say, by way of the Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation, they're going to say, it's $1 billion to renovate the Astrodome. It's $1 billion to do this. And we're not gonna be able to do that just to bring it up, but we can do this. And then we can just celebrate the legacy of the Astrodome. And I think what they're gonna try to do is they're gonna try to get public opinion going towards, you know what, it is time, you know, we should just let it go. It's time to go. And, you know, they're gonna try to sway the public opinion into creating a town center in the middle of NRG Park that interconnects all of those buildings and either put parking or put parking below in the hole, because, you know, the dome is built 30-foot hole that's 710 feet wide. That's half of the stadium is underground. That's why it looks like this next to NRG Stadium. NRG Stadium is up here because they have all the conduit and all the sewers that they had to do below the Astrodome to feed into that complex. And if you dug all that up, it was going to add tens of millions of dollars more to the stadium. So they put the football field about 2 feet just below grade level. So that's why when you go to NRG Stadium, you got to walk up. You got to take a mountain worth of escalators and all that. With the dome, you either went up or down, and it was very easy. But that's the difference. So they have that hole in the ground that they either have to fill, they have to create parking, they have to put a steel structure and then put some parking on top or a park. But I think that's what's going to happen. Because right now, we don't have leadership in Harris County for someone to really take the bull by the horns and say the Astrodome is valuable. We own the Astrodome. The Astrodome is a state antiquities landmark. It is on the National Historic, the Registry of Historic Places. And when you think about it, the Houston Texans are called Texans. Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is all about Western and Texas heritage. Here you have a building that is a Texas state antiquities landmark that is fully brandable to the history and the marketing and the branding to these organizations. And they're completely just kind of wiping it vanish. If you remember, who are the real big, who remember the Colt 45s in here? Right? Okay. When the Colt 45s moved from Colt Stadium to the Astrodome, Colt Stadium was left there on that complex. They removed the seats. They actually took all those folding chairs and they put them in the dome. They put them in the locker rooms, Oilers rooms. They had them all. If you look at some of the pictures, you see these chairs, you realize those are Colt Stadium seats. They used them in end zone seating in the Astrodome. And they just kind of left Colt Stadium to kind of go by the wayside. They put Astro World trams and things that weren't working to kind of use it as storage. That's what they're doing right now to the dome. You walk in the dome, you'll see in some of these pictures, right there. That reminds me of Colt Stadium. back in the late sixties after the Astrodome opened. Except now it's underneath this massive roof. They call that painted vanish. That's what they wanted to do. They completely whitewashed or like gray paint, off-white paint. Colt Stadium was real color. Anybody who went to Colt Stadium? You probably remember the colorful banners, the colorful seats. They wanted all that gone. And eventually it became a tax liability in Harris County. So they sold it to a Mexican league team and it's down there, like an erector set, right? Well, that's what I think they're trying to do here now. They're trying to paint the Astrodome vanish. So what I would like to do is kind of walk you through these. I think there's about 40 photos here. And what I have been discussing, these are not the final photos, some of them are, but what I have been discussing with Lisbeth is that we're trying to do an exhibition of Astrodome photos over the past 25 years, showing what Houston has done to the Astrodome, what Harris County leaders have done, what they have ignored, and what you have taken from an eighth wonder of the world to something that is just sitting next to NRG Stadium. And shame on this area for not having, I remember Larry Durker said, if we had the creativity to invent it, we need to have the creativity to do something else with it. He said that a couple of years ago at an Astrodome conservative. Yeah. And I'll tell you right now, it's not a matter of trying to figure out what to do. I can tell you right now, we did the plan. The plan exists. I personally met with the rodeo. I personally met with the Houston Texans, the presidents of those organizations. We sat in a room in the stadium. I brought models, I brought renderings and everything. Some of the stuff similar to what y'all seen here. We had a 2-hour discussion. And what I came out of that room was that they're trying to do, I will say this, they're trying to do what's best for their organizations. They are trying to do that, but in that storm of trying to do that, they're tossing all that aside. So there's this tug of war over the existing business model that is at NRG Park versus the legacy of the Astrodome that is a state antiquities landmark, and you can't do anything with it until you get permission. We have a plan. Everybody agrees. But like I said, there are so many cooks in the kitchen on this project. Nobody wants to stand forward. And I will say this: is anybody here involved with the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo? Okay, the volunteers. You've heard of the Cosa Nostra, right? Okay, yeah, right. The 5 families, right? Well, they're the 5 families put together here in Houston. Okay, they are strong arming this situation, and they're pushing it to a point where you might have lawsuits because this building cannot be torn down without permission from the Texas Historical Commission because they have deemed it a state antiquities landmark. There is a lot of space in here. All of this can be brought up to street level. You have underground. You have 6.5 acres of floor space in there. 6.5. All those upper floors, they're programmable. I'm not going to go through it, but if you want me to walk you through it some other time, please reach out. But this place would become another wonder of the world for a whole new generation. And this would be seen every day on social media. In the generation that we have today and moving forward, the Astrodome has the ability to last longer as a futuristic building than it did for baseball, for 35 seasons of baseball. It can be that for longer. It's not just a baseball stadium. This is Houston's living room. Elvis was there, Neil Armstrong, you name it. All those years that it was the epicenter of Houston, anybody and everybody who was the best in their business, the best in their industry, they were all there, underneath there. And that counts for something. It also counts that the structure itself, the engineering, didn't exist before this was there. We kind of take it for granted, or a lot of other people take it for granted now. That had to be invented. All of these columns that hold this massive 9,000 tons worth of steel, you had to figure out how to do that. And I've even studied, I walked in there and I went to all those columns at the top where the roof line meets, and I did a study because the way that those columns are oriented is kind of like an elbow. They're made, this is the floor of the top level of the Astrodome. And then you have the roof compressing onto to those columns. They're all designed, like they're about 30 feet apart in a circular pattern. They are designed to move like this. Now, when the dome was built, they placed sheetrock. Sheetrock, this is just wood here, but they placed sheetrock around those columns so the people up in the skyboxes couldn't see those columns tilted. But in this renovation work that they've done to bring the Astrodome to the point where you could renovate it, they removed all that. So I went in there, I took a ruler, took my chart, took the blueprints, and I measured the deflection of that roof to see how well, I don't think anybody else has done that. And when I wanted to see if there was a correlation. I don't think I included it on the thing. I actually created a color chart, but what I will tell you is that the dome is extremely strong. It is, in fact, Walter P. Moore is certifying it as stronger than NRG Stadium right next door. This year.
Wow.
It did it back in 2018, and they're going back in there again, and they're gonna certify it again as how strong that building is. In the areas, you see these doors right here, right about here, and then over here on this side, and then on the north end, which you don't see, are the ramps. And in that area, that's where the columns are kind of pointing outward. And then in the middle spaces, the columns are either directly up or they're pointing inward to the building. And that tells me, in those areas, all the people that were walking up and down the ramps over those years, they were putting the weight at those 3 points around the building.
Mike, which direction are we looking at?
We're on the north, we're looking south.
South.
West is to your right, yeah, to your right, the east is to your left. So home plate is over there, to the far right, and this over here is where Jimmy Wynn used to hang out, over here. And this is a football configuration. The seats have been in football configuration since they filmed Friday Night Lights in about summer of 2003. And they've never put them back into baseball configuration since that time.
What were you looking for, a correlation?
I was looking for a correlation to see if that roof settled over the course of, well, that was back, I did that study back in like 2017 or 18. Over the course of those years, I wanted to see if everything was just skewed. Like, you know, one going this way, one going, no, the engineering you can tell is working because they're all collectively going the same way in sections. I mean, it's a strong building. It really is, and it's really impressive to see what they call knuckle columns because of the way they can move. The engineering gets real technical. But anyway, we can go through this and I'll kind of show you. These are not all of the pictures. Like I said, there's thousands of them. And there's some that I like better, but this kind of generically shows you. But this is, you can see that the field boxes are empty. There's really no seats over there. The seats that still exist are all on the floor. These seats that are out here are the added seats from the late 80s. So if you're looking over here, right about this line, you see the rainbow seats. To about here is where the private suite that the Astros had. Judge Hoffines had that suite from about here to here in that section. The Hoffines offices, the original Astros office, executive offices, right here, right behind what used to be the orange mezzanine. The Hoffines office is still there, except they've removed all the walls. But what is still in place, Larry, did you ever go in the judge's office?
What?
Hoffines' office? Did you ever go in Hoffines' office?
I don't think so, other than residential.
No, this is his actual like work.
Yeah.
It was about an office about as big as this room. There is still some faux marble on the wall. There's on the back wall, but it's still there. It used to be backlit and it's kind of decorative. It's the only thing that remains in place from the office. But we can, I won't take too long. But this kind of takes you a little bit through the dome. This is a control room that is tied to the engineering area back underneath the dome scaler, kind of on the southeast portion of the Astrodome. And everywhere you go down there, you can see all this X bracing. That's what that beam is there. That beam is not, it's not something that fell down. It's actually an X bracing as part of the lower structure. The next one here, this is a example of some of the seats that are on the floor. over here, this next one, this is the entranceway to the visiting clubhouse. So you can imagine all of the famous ball players who came through Houston over the years, they all were in that clubhouse right there. And the next one here, this is a shot looking back from right behind home plate. You can see all the seats that are missing. The gift shop is back there underneath the shadow area. I was lucky enough to get a couple of seats from right here. I have seats from every level. I did. I made it a point. And I was lucky enough to do that. And then the next one is, this is part of the concourse. Now, this is, this shot here kind of shows, how dirty it is in the dome, okay? Now, has anybody ever been inside Bacon Park? I don't know if you'll admit if they park back. Has anybody been in there in the off season? Have you walked through there? It is dirty. It gets filthy, right? Because you get birds nesting. It's a big empty building that has exposure to the elements. Well, on the outside of the dome, there are 21 portals that allow air to come through the Astrodome. Because where the ramps are, there's 21 portals. So it blows in a lot of dust, and there's not an engineering department like there are over at the oh. So anyway, it gets really dirty in the Astrodome, and a lot of people misconceive that there's no way to clean it. But if you look at what Minute Maid Park looks like in the off season, it looks a lot like that. Seats are filthy, everything. Next picture. Some of the turnstiles that have been used. Here's another shot of some of the seats. Another wide shot. This is the home plate area over here. Right here would have been looking down the first baseline back to home plate. Third base back over there where that box is, that large yellow box. And then this right here, this is the picture that was taken on April 9th, the anniversary of the Astrodome, about 2 or 3 years ago, going on 3 years ago. It was at the Race for the Dome that we had the Astrodome Conservancy on the sunrise. And as you look there, the Astrodome was repainted back in 2014 to match the original colors. It was actually clean on the outside, and it looks better today than it actually did the last year that the Astros were playing there. There's a photo here that'll show you what the Astrodome used to look like, and people today say it's an eyesore, but it's pretty clean on the outside, and it matches. If you put a picture from the 60s versus the picture of what it looks like today, it's very, very close. This is one of the ramps here. You can see some of the dust. Some of these pictures I've converted to black and white. And part of the discussion is to do a black and white series or a color series. This is a shot from the upper deck. This shows the massive seating bowl. This picture here, back in the 60s up until about this is where the home run spectacular was, the scoreboard, the center field. This would have been right above the old Astrolight screen where Chester Charge used to go across and the Diamond Vision screen was. And then here, what has exposed is as they take down the false ceilings, you start to see the structure come out. Now it's really, really educational for somebody like me, because then I could actually see the things that were in the blueprints. I could see them in real life and kind of see what the status was of those beams and skeletal system of the dome. This just kind of a portal. This is, I think this is behind home plate. This kind of just shows the upper ramp concourse that goes through the old rainbow level. One of the doors kind of just shows you, some of it still looks very normal and some of it looks like a construction site. Here, this is a shot back to the infirmary that they have in the medical area. And then this right here, because Houston is very humid, and if you look at our Houston freeways, you can see what the humidity does in Houston. This is on the ramp where it's exposed to the elements. Now, the steel is still very much, it's fine. The steel structure is fine, but the paint hasn't been updated in a while. And actually, this is a very isolated type thing. But I took this picture and I'm showing it to you because if I was to put that out on social media, everybody would say, see, look, the Astrodome's rusting away. That's really just one location in the Astrodome. It's not the whole building. And then over here, this shows you, this is what it still looks like. I mean, it's the Houston landscape, you know, there it is right there. Another shot just looking down at one of the escalators that millions of people went on. This is taken many years ago when they were going to, they dug out the berms. You remember the grassy areas on the outside? How are we doing on time? Are we okay?
Oh, yeah, you're fine.
Okay. I'm gonna mention this a little bit. This is a real interesting thing. And if you go out, I'm gonna stand on this side over here. If you look, I'm gonna show you with my check. See this area right here? Okay, and then this area right there, okay? That's the retaining wall. That's what helps actually support the building from the ground. It goes another 30 feet down from there. The time capsule that we found back in 2015 is directly under this column here. This is column 19, this is 18, this is 17. And directly down in the dome scaler behind home plate, there's a canister that's about 24 feet wide by about 12 inches wide. And they had the Houston Consular Corps back in 1963 on March 27th of that year, they started official construction. They buried a time capsule underneath there. And back in 2015, I got a call from Ed Emmett, the county judge. And they said, hey, do you know where that thing is? We're trying to locate it. And I said, yeah. So we went down there and I had a real good idea where it was. And we went down there, we went with the sheriff's department, we went with image, there was a lady, it was a group from Rice University. They had an image machine, looked like a stroller, but sits to the ground. And I asked him, I said, run it along that wall right there, which is right on the base of that retaining wall. And sure enough, we can see this. It looks like what do you call those things when you see a baby? Ultrasound, like an ultrasound. Look like an ultrasound. And sorry, it's been a long time since I had kids. And what you saw in this thing was she stopped and I said, yeah, and I described it. She goes, yeah, it's about 2 feet wide. And I said, that's it right there. So we dug into the ground. The county dug 6 feet into the ground away from that column. And they wanted to see what the earth was like underneath the Astrodome, because I don't know if y'all know this, but there's an underground stream that runs underneath the dome. And there's a pump on the opposite side of where this picture is, and it's consistently active. And it's continuously not flooding at the bottom of the Astrodome. It's there. You walk over there and you hear it. It's like a well. You hear this underground stream. That's why the area behind home plate for people that worked at the dome, it was called Catfish Hole. And anybody who worked there will recognize that name, Catfish Hole. So that's where that is. But we couldn't go and get the time capsule because it was underneath a structural footing. And you would damage the footing, which is okay. It's not going to make the building come down, but it would have cost several $1,000s worth of damage that would need to be fixed. So we found out what the earth was like. It's dry, it's compacted, it's in really good shape. The foundation of the Astrodome is in real good shape. I was able to get pieces of the foundation out of that rubble that came out from there with sand, because they put sand on, like in construction sites, you put sand and then you have a foundation. All that came out. And so good news, the ground underneath the dome is in real good shape. The structure of it is super strong. And then we'll move over here. This picture was taken right about. The goal is to get it. The goal is to eventually get it. So if the building is renovated, to me, that comes at one of the front burner projects. When you start to go through a renovation process and a construction, contractor, take a look at that and you wrap that into the scope of work for the building. This was about 2004. This next picture here, this is inside the Astros clubhouse. This is looking back over to the clubhouse manager. That's where that exit sign is. That goes back into the dining room and then the tunnel or the pathway that goes back to the tunnel outside the Astros clubhouse. This is what it looked like for a number of years, up until I would say about 2010. And then they started removing the carpet and some of the chairs and all that stuff. But it looked like this for a good long time. This is the pneumatic tube system that they used to use. Now we can scan barcodes. We don't even have ticket stubs now, right? But this is underneath the home plate area in the vault of the ticket office, which is underneath where the ticket booths used to be behind the space in between NRG Stadium and the Dome, that west gate, this is underground. And what they used to do was print all the tickets. And when somebody would come up to a booth, either at the north, south or west or the east side, they would have these tubes all through the building. And so these ticket people would go here and they would pull the best tickets for that price. They put them into one of those containers right there and you go, kind of like the bank. And those things would go around to the different ticket groups around the Astrodome. That's how they used to do that. And you have those codes right there for the different windows. So that way they knew where those set of tickets were gonna wind up. This thing is still in place down there. I think it'd be cool to put it on public display at some point. Now, I will say too, we've been talking about the Astros. So I helped develop the Astros Hall of Fame and bringing that to life. In fact, I got two advisory board members here, Bob Grell and Larry Durker, were on that board that helped elect those Hall of Famers. But the funny thing is that even back in the original drawing plans for the Astrodome, right in this area before they put this, they had it allotted for a museum, a Houston baseball museum, that they never put in. But it was gonna be kind of in this area, like within 10 feet of where this area is. And it was gonna be an area that's probably bigger than this room, but they were gonna celebrate the Houston Buffs and all that type of fair in there, because the Astros were brand new, right? This next picture, this is what controlled all of the lights, all the ring of lights inside the Astrodome. This is still in place. I think this is a real nice artifact. But these switches right here, they're on the press level, right where the writers sat. They're up in a wall with a door that opens up, and it's really interesting. They don't work anymore. A lot of the lamps along the ring of lights, there were 1,950 lights around the top of the dome, and these control them in different sections. This is a portal. Now I took this picture because this is the exact angle. This is what it looks like. Well, it doesn't look like this today because those seats are not in place anymore. So just imagine the seats are missing. But this was the angle that when the dome opened on April 9th, 1965, Judge Hoffhines, the president, Lyndon Johnson, Lady Bird, Mrs. Hoffhines, that whole group that was sitting in that private box, this was their view. And you would have seen everything, but now those additional seats were built. And so you're on a concourse now. And that area that once that private box is a concession stand now. And the elevator that served that area is right behind a door. It's still there, but I took that picture because it's a contrast of the other views. I got another picture of Hoffine sitting in that area, and you can see the whole stadium behind him. And as you walk through the Astrodome, occasionally you find this. And you find relics of the past. And this dates back to the 80s, right around 1980, 81, 82, 83, 84, somewhere right in there. I even found cups from the 70s and late 60s in there. Yes, like they were wedged in the structure, like people dropped them and they weren't where people would clean. And I asked Elizabeth, I have them. And they're just what's that?
I said for how much longer? Looking at Harry M. Stevens.
Yes,
Was the original concessionaire.
correct.
This is something I heard, and it's hearsay. I'm not sure it's true.
But let's hear
Somebody
it.
in this room knows. Harry M. Stevens Haggard was the concessionaire that invented the hot dog.
Yes, he was, because I did a video on that. Yep, the hot dog. And let me expand upon that while we're talking about the hot dog. Can I tell you a hot dog story? Has anybody heard of Operation Hot Dogs from the Astrodome? Nope. Okay. So in the early years, the Colt 45s in 1964, they knew during 1964 that they were going to get rid of the Colt 45's name. They already knew that. They knew that when the dome opened the next year, they weren't going to be called the Colt 45s. So Judge Hoffhines sent an artist into Colt Stadium to sketch all these drawings and come up with logos. They wanted to maintain the colors that the Colt 45s were using, which were orange and navy, which the Astros still continue. We went back to that several years ago now. And they did all this planning, all this stuff. The skyboxes, which you see at the top layer of the stadium, they didn't sell hot dogs up there, okay? And when they were doing the conversion from the Colt 45s to the Astros, one of the friends of the club is what I would say was Alan Shepard. And Alan Shepard knew Judge Hoffines, knew the members of the Houston Sports Association. He had been there before while the dome was under construction, and he bought a suite. He had a skybox with his business. He was in business. He was an astronaut and he was in business. You know, he had a heart problem and he wasn't able to fly after his initial mission as the first American in space. But he had a skybox and he was a huge baseball fan. And he wanted hot dogs. And they didn't have hot dogs on the suite level. So Shepard brought in his own hot dog machine. And the concessionaire manager came by one day and was like, "What is this? We can't have this." What he was doing was having to send the staff member, the concession person who was working the skybox, they would have to come down from the top level down to the upper deck and buy a bunch of hot dogs and bring them back upstairs through a special elevator. It's like, no, let's just bring in our own hot dogs. Let's just do that. And the concessionaire was like, "No way, no, we can't do that. No outside food." Even back then, no outside food, none of that. And so Shepard got on the phone and called Hoffines, who was over here right behind right field. He said, "They won't let me have my hot dogs." He goes, "They want me to eat steak and all this other stuff. I want a hot dog. I'm at a baseball game." So Hoffines put a guy in position and they made a deal with him and they put a hot dog machine inside Alan Shepard's suite up there on the skyboxes. But that whole tale was called Operation Hot Dogs because a bunch of people started going to the suite and asking, "Can I have a Shepard special hot dog?" And so they kind of became like a thing, right, in the early years. The next picture here, this is looking from the south to the north. And I took this picture because I don't know if you notice it, but this is what the Astrodome looked like in the 60s, except the roof was completely white because it didn't have metal framing that's on there now that creates that gray look. That gray framing was added in the early 70s when they resealed the Astrodome. The Astrodome roof was white with those clear skylights. And now they're the milk glass that they put up there in the 70s. And so the skylights are white. But this kind of shows you that the dome still looks a lot like it used to look back in the early years, except for a couple of missing skylights right there. That's about it. And when you stand inside the Astrodome in the afternoon, really get an idea for what that was like before they take. And then this is a view from right behind home plate. That circle of dirt right there with the cones down there, that's where home plate is. There's right there in the center, that is home plate, and you see second base, first base, and third base are covered, and the seats are in football configuration. They would have been brought back in the V formation. And then this is a view from the top. You can see the baseball field a little bit more right there with home plate, right there in the middle of that circular area. This next picture is what I was talking about. Ignore the bottom part. Look at the top part. That's an eyesore. The picture that you just saw, if you go back to picture 27, look at that, look at this. This is what the dome looks like now. And that's what it looked like back in 2014. That's what it looked like when the Astros were playing there in 97, 98, 99. No one cleaned it. I was surprised. Why would we not do anything? And I'll tell you one thing too, that looks like rust at the top. Back in 94, 95, they were gonna paint that area up there green. You might remember that at some point in the 90s, in the mid 90s, everything became green and they added those fake flowers in the outfield, you know. They were gonna paint the top of the outfield on the forest green because they wanted to start it, they wanted to give it an old time feel. I was like, how do you do that to the Astros? They really do that to the Astros. But that's an eyesore right there. Up the other picture, number 27, this is what the Astrodome looks like today. It's in much better, cleaner condition, and it's been repainted. It's been environmentally clean. It's an environmentally safe procedure that they use to do that. And they've done it repeatedly too. Again, we have a lot of pollution in Houston. Look at the freeways, look at some of the other places. They have to do it ever so often. This next picture here, this is funny. I put this in here just for humor. We're getting toward the end. That's just me in my living room right there. There was a couple of seats there, and I took that picture just to kind of show, again, what we have done to the Astrodome. There's the barren field box seats. There's the steps where seats used to be, and there's only those two seats that are not attached to to the risers, but I sat there and just got that shot. These next few pictures here, and now I'm gonna be wrapping it up here now for you, and, back in, 21, and I think 22, the Hoffines estate, had auctions, just to put it real short and simple. A lot of stuff became available through public auction. And I took it upon myself to acquire some of these things because I felt, I don't know where they're gonna go. There were photos, I got a number of things. I'll find his glasses, a pair of his glasses, a jacket, the shooting star jacket that has his name embroidered into it. And these pictures, there were 2 big books of photos that were in there. And I thought, I need to preserve this. I need to know where they're at. I guess you can call it the control freak or whatever, but as a historian, I needed to be able to preserve these things and not just dissipate or even get damaged somewhere else. So I wanted to share some of those images because I think some of these that you probably have never seen before, and maybe you've seen some similar. But do you remember the retaining wall that I showed you? Remember that? That's what this used to look like. This is the bottom of what became the retaining wall. That framework right there is what they built upward. Over here, this area right here, that became a walkway to the field boxes. This is where the ticket booth was. That pneumatic tube system was right in this area, or still is in that area right there. This was taken on March 27th of 1963, when they actually began official construction on the dome. All the county officials, you see they're sitting in Astrodome type seats. There's a model of the Astrodome that's right there. It got destroyed back in 2005. That model lasted a long number of years until they mishandled it, left it out, and it got completely destroyed. That's another long story.
Where's town?
Here's the interesting thing. In these pictures, you never see Judge Roy Hoffines. In the pictures of them firing Colt 45 pistols in the ground, you never see him. And I could never get a clear answer as to why he wasn't in any of those pictures. Still don't know. I'm not going to speculate, but that's from the first. And then we'll look right here. This is up from the top of the dome. You see the framework of the field boxes. You can see the circular rails that are underneath there, how they move on tracks. This is kind of what the Astrodome looks like today, with the seats being removed from the arena area. This is just another exterior picture before they put up the precast grill that's on the outside. Here's a steel structure from about 1963. This is over in the this is in the left field stands. That's the mezzanine, and then the stands further over there. Those are the pavilion seats. You see some of the false work towers that are holding up the roof. This wall right here, as you see, doesn't have any upper stands in it because that's where the scoreboard is going to be built. That's the eastern side of the Astrodome. And then there's Judge Hoffines right there. Now on November 1st of 1963, they had a topping out ceremony. They ceremoniously lifted, in fact, the next picture, they lifted that beam into place. And they had a celebration, a topping out ceremony. And they put that final beam up there at the top of the Astrodome. And then here, this is the new logo, which was unveiled 60 years ago, this past December 7th of 2024. There's Rusty Staub, there's Lum Harris, there's Bob Willis, and I do not know who the other gentleman is right there on the far right. But I need to place him. But this logo here was the first logo of the Astros. That's the very first logo, major league logo that had a stadium in it. The Astros, and still today, there's no other team that has ever put their stadium in their primary logo on any of their marks. I think that might be the end of the slides, right? Yeah. Okay. So thank you for listening. Thank you for. All right, if we have, I don't know if you want to, if anybody has questions or anything like that, very quickly, or I know. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want, I know you know this, and I can see a lot of photographs to show the blue side panels and the girders and the construction parts that go around that. In contrast to after they painted it
Oh, yeah.
and how that developed after turf. And to me, that's a really big part of those early years.
Yes, so to kind of delve into that, we just went past the anniversary of AstroTurf being tested into the, it was January 17th of 1966. They had a dirt floor in the dome, the seats were in football configuration. They were getting ready for the first ever rodeo performances in the Astrodome, and they tested AstroTurf. Now, the way that the dome skylights are constructed, the original ones, they are 2-layer. You have this lucite panel on the outside that's clear, and underneath it they're 7 by 3 feet. That's the size of a skylight on the dome. And underneath it was a diffuser. Like Larry was saying, when you built the girders of the Astrodome and it went over, you had what's called a lamella truss. And it's a German design dates back to like World War II. It was patented, and then it was used in America. It's a very strong diamond pattern type of construction technique. But when you put that over the field, a playing field, you see this, all these girders, these shadows. So they had to put diffusers underneath the skylights. So when the sunlight came through, it would even out the sunshine inside the building, except it just created too much glare. They didn't take into account that the diffuser with the lucite was going to actually make the sunshine more intense than what it actually is. So that was the big issue. But some of the construction photos, it shows you that. You can see all those girders over the floor of the dome versus when they put the skylight.
So just to talk about the legacy of the Astrodome and what it means to Houston. I've heard people talk about the Astrodome disparagingly in Houston, but if you get outside of Houston, all over the world, Houston the Astrodome is a very well-known structure and identified with Houston. And I heard someone say one time, it opened my eyes and said, the Astrodome in Houston is like the Eiffel Tower is to Paris. Everyone thinks of that image. And this idea of trying to educate, young people don't know about it is very noteworthy. I don't know if you're going to be successful. If you have a ticket line, I'll be right down there with you, behind you. But man, if we let these powers that be destroy this thing, I think it would be a total travesty for Houston, and they'll look back on it in the future and go, wow, we really screwed that up.
Let me tell you a little story real quick. I'm sorry, I'm full of stories, right? Joe, are we okay? Well, I'm gonna wrap it up here. No, I promise you. It's 8:09. In February of 2017, I got a call from the Harris County Judge's office. And they said, Mike, would you, Ed Emmett is gonna go to Austin. We're taking the contingency. There's gonna be some other people. The Astrodome Conservancy was one. And they said, would you go and testify to the State Senate Committee on behalf of the Harris County people and talk about the historical importance of the Astrodome? I said, yes, I was there. I drove to Austin the next day because I got the call, drove to Austin, got there. I was in the state capitol by about 7:15 in the morning. So I left Houston really early. And then I came back that afternoon. I was back home by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But they had a session with our mayor today. John Whitmire was the dean of the Texas Senate. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I like what John Whitmire is doing in Houston, okay? I like John Whitmire. He was dead set against the Astrodome. I had never seen another politician lecture a chief executive of a county in Texas like that. You can't do that, you can't do this, the people should vote, and this and that. This is a fully owned county asset. Nothing owned on the Astrodome, nothing. And there's precedent for any building in Harris County that the county owns. They have the budget, they come up with an idea, they can do whatever they want to do. John Whitmire, I looked them down. I'm really proud of this. They were asking me also, if Yankee Stadium can come down, then the Astros. Let me tell you why Yankee Stadium came down. Because they swapped land. The new stadium was here, the old stadium was there. When they built the new stadium, they took all the parkland And city law said, well, you can't have two structures, you gotta replace that parkland. So what they do, they got rid of the old stadium, converted that into parkland, they have more park space than they did before. That was city law. Nobody talks about that, but that's why Yankee Stadium came down. And Yankee Stadium wasn't the first of its kind. I mean, it hosted Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle, all those guys, right? But this is more than just baseball history. This is about, this is about the DNA of an area of the United States. This is DNA of Houston, this is DNA of Texas, right? So it goes beyond that. Yeah, we all have memories and we can talk about the greatest plays and all this and that. But I'm not saying that it's, nobody died there defending Texas like Davy Crockett did and those guys at the Alamo. But in the history of the state of Texas, it meant just as much to the evolution of Texas in those moments as it did back then. The moments that took place at the Astrodome were able to take place because of a place like the Alamo and San Jacinto. So that's where it is. It's the DNA of Texas. It's the DNA of Houston. Now, Houston's a transient type city. So we get a lot of people from out of town. Maybe they don't understand. But you need somebody who can grab the bull by the horns. I've considered running for county judge in a couple of years because I hear somebody's not going to run for county judge again. And maybe we can put this on the forefront because I have a lot of civic ideas too for Houston and how we move forward in the, we recently became members. I'm really excited, and this is a little off topic, but I love Houston. I'm a native Houstonian. My grandparents, my parents, we're from Houston, okay? And Houston City became members of the Greater Houston Partnership, which is about as Houston as you can get with an organization. And I'm now on the Economic Redevelopment Advisory Committee. We're the only media partner for the Greater Houston Partnership that has a media partner in there. And I'm looking at that as something that can help with projects like this in the future and really kind of organize people. But that's and just real quick, the Paris Eiffel Tower analogy. When the Eiffel Tower was built, it was built for the World's Fair in the late 1800s. Okay. After that, I don't know if you know this, they wanted to tear it down. Parisians said, that's an eyesore. My God, that's an eyesore. Why is it still here? Why is it here 20 years later? Tear that thing down. That's exactly what they were saying. And guess what happened? They didn't. They repurposed it, became a radio transmission tower because technology changed, radio came about, and it's a tourist attraction. It's one of the top tourist attractions globally. Yeah. And the Astrodome, and this is something that I mentioned to the State Senate Committee. I said the Astrodome was already that. It was outdrawing the Eiffel Tower when it was built. It was already that. We don't have to convert it into something in people's minds to take it to a landmark set. It already is. All you have to do is put some imagination, put some political guts, to put it lightly, political guts into it, and get that place going. And bring all those people to the table and connect the dots and have it live. And then we don't have to say, go another 20 years, this. Okay.
Would Mark change his view at all?
Well, so
I'm just going on YouTube, Mike.
So I'm gonna tell you, look, I have a lot of friends who I have great respect for, okay? I have some friends that are part of some of these organizations who I really think are doing a great job, okay? That said, I'm gonna tell you, go Google, go look up over the past 2 or 3 months. I want you to look at some of the changes that were made to the Harris County Houston Sports Authority. We have a good man who's now the CEO of the Harris County Houston Sports Authority. That's the organization that actually owns Minute Maid Park. It owns Toyota Center, not really NRG Stadium, but that organization financed these buildings back at a time where it used car rental and hotel occupancy taxes to build it. We didn't use property taxes to build all these new structures. They have the former Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation CEO now at the Sports Authority. And that is primarily because Houston is looking to be a leader in attracting big events. Okay, to Houston, the World World Cup is coming next year. Some of the game, we want a Super Bowl here again. They're gonna have to make upgrades. NRG Stadium, Rodeo, and the Texans have been renegotiating for about 2 years now. And I think they're coming to a conclusion on it, on how they move forward at NRG Park. There's been a lot of scenarios. I won't get into that right now. That's a whole nother 3 hours. But John Whitmire has kind of been the catalyst in some of those moves. Okay, John Whitmire is a strategic person. And John Whitmire is correct when he says, as Houston goes, Texas goes. I'm a firm believer in that. I think that indirectly, he's kind of behind this effort to bring forth what I said you might see over the summer. In an indirect way, by just putting the right pieces in place. Well, it's not really viable anymore. We want to spend that money on that. Look at what we can do here. Whole brand new, for the future, for this, for that, and wipe the slate clean of anything that I talked about here tonight. That's it. Plain and simple. I think that's what's happening. But I like him. He's doing good in Houston.
Have we paid off all the indebtedness for the government?
Yes. The Astrodome is fully paid off. All the original bonds from 1962, 1963, plus all the renovations in the 1980s, over $100 million from the 80s, all that's retired. Everything's retired. The NRG Park pays about $167,000 a year for insurance on NRG Park, which includes or doesn't include the Astrodome. It's a blanketed insurance policy.
One thing, pretty article about the dome and some, like competition and the funded by the market.
Yeah.
That all.
No, ignore it. That's, this is my beef, is that there's been a lot of ideas, but these ideas don't bring the stakeholders to the table. They don't bring Harris County, they don't bring the rodeo, they don't bring the Texans, they don't bring the Conservancy, they don't bring the Hickory County Sports and Convention Corporation, they don't bring the other, there's another board too. You know, I get that there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen here. They don't connect those dots.
Well,
They
we
just-
have a county commissioner that doesn't, that never heard of the outfit going on.
But we have, yeah, well, you know, I'm a nice guy, you know, Mom said, you know, watch what you say, you know. All I will say is that, when our current county judge took office, I reached out to the office because I had lent some advice or information to Ed Emmett over the years. And I reached out to her office, to Lena Hidalgo's office, and I said, hey, if you ever need any information on the Astrodome, feel free to ask her. This is what I've done, this is, you know, and I did, I went over there to meet with her chief of staff and some of the other people. But, that's a person, it's a clear example, she doesn't know, she's only learned of Houston from what she's worked here with. She doesn't know anything of the Astrodome. You know, it's like me trying to speak, you know, Martian or something, you know, to her, it's just not understandable. And there hasn't been a willingness to learn, right? You know, I put myself as a resource. Anyway, we have a meeting coming up though, in a couple of nights where we're gonna actually have the board, the Conservancy, a small group of us is meeting with one of the Harris County commissioners. And we're gonna go over some stuff, you know, some things. So anyway.
Well, Mike, it's always a pleasure, Dave. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I wish I knew a quarter as much about the Astrodome that you do.
Hey, Elizabeth, let us know when the house sale's going on.
Oh, yeah, all the old bills.
Yeah, all the old stuff, yeah, I know what's going on.
Go to HoustonCityBeat.com and sign up
Oh.
for it.
Oh, yeah.
There's
I'm already, I'm already there.
Mike's got one more thing.
There is one thing, because I'm putting together that series on Houston City Beat where I want to talk to people who have been involved with the Astrodome. If any of you know, somebody, we're talking about the lady who worked and had a picture of Elvis or whatever it was. I'd be more than happy to spend 15 minutes talking with her on the show that we have. We can actually show it and put her out there. So if anybody knows, maybe you can reach out to Joe and reach out to me and we'll connect and yeah, do that. Yeah, that's what we do. Storytellers. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. All right, so I forgot to say that our next meeting is February 17th, next month. We're gonna have Jonathan Goodwin. Gonna give us a history of baseball stadiums in Houston. Okay, and I'm working on somebody else who's gonna do another Astrodome presentation in March, plus a couple of other things that I'm working on. So what we're gonna do real quick is we're gonna announce the results of the chapter Hall of Fame vote, and then we're gonna go right into trivia. We're gonna try to figure out this trivia thing. So Herb, you and Patrick want to take over for the? He just got a couple more ballots.
Yeah, I got two more, but I don't think it's gonna change anything. So with the up here.
Patrick, he's.
Yeah, I'll send out the full results when give them to Joe, so when he sends out the wrap-up email, everyone can see everything. But our vote, we inducted two people. Anyone want to guess who it is? Billy Wagner. Yeah, Billy Wagner shockingly had 90% of the vote, and Ichiro had like 94% of the vote.
Did anybody leave Ichiro off the ballot?
Ichiro, I think four was left off 4 ballots. We had like 60, 62, 63 total ballots, something like that. Yeah.
Ichiro.
The people that left.
Yeah, I'll send out so when Justin's at the wrap up email, I'll have that spreadsheet there so you can see all the votes. There was a couple players who were pretty spot on with what the actual vote was, like A-Rod and Manny Ramirez right in the 30%. And like I said, CC Sabathia was like 58% for us, and then Carlos Beltran was a little lower here than what he was with the sports writers. So,
A little lower
yeah.
or like a lot lower?
Yeah, it's like about 60 something, so
Okay.
kind of in the ballpark, but not as well regarded as the sports writers. There you go.
All right,
Don't forget me.
don't forget who? Me. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Without further ado, Mike has something that he would like to pass along about the late, great Mr. Baseball.
If I can get up.
Mike, you all right?
Just trying to get up there.
Well, I had to wait for Joe to remember. I also brought this. I thought we were having a SABR show and tell tonight. So this was the little medal. They gave away a replica of the Astrodome at the last game in the dome. And everyone in attendance got one. We did win that game, 9-4. Beat the Dodgers and clinched the pennant.
And we had to win the game, in order to clinch over the Reds. If they had won and we had lost, we'd be tied, and we'd have to play a playoff game the next day. And they were also going to bring a bunch of us out on the field after the game to culminate an all Astrodome team. And as the manager, I have some real misgivings. Because if we had lost that game,
But we won.
and the Reds had won,
Had a great
I
manager.
did not want to go out on the field and be celebrated. But we won.
Yeah, I've got tickets in here from that game. My daughter got one too.
Hey, Mike, turn around, show it to the camera.
There it is, and it's full of the confetti they dropped. And my tickets are in there and some other stuff. I haven't opened it in 25 years, so. Till I found it tonight. I was a big fan of Mr. Baseball, Bob Wagner. He passed away. I used to watch him on Carson all the time, so. I did a little research on him. Y'all might not know all these things. He was named minor league player of the year. He said it would have been a bigger honor had he not been his second year in the majors when he won it. Johnny Carson's the one that gave him the name Mr. Baseball. Fondly remembers his first major league game. He came out on the field and the manager went, Jock goes on the inside. He was such a bad hitter, when they looked for a sign, the base coaches would turn their back. That's what he said. But he had a great shoe and glove contract, because several of the companies paid him big bucks to never use their material, not to use their gloves or anything. In fact, the equipment manager once said, "Hey, we got a new glove for Euchre." The manager went, "Great trade." He said his 1965 baseball card came out without a picture. And he knew the secret to catching the knuckleball was just to wait till he quit rolling and then you could just pick it up. So, and he said he knew he was getting released by the Braves in 1967 when his manager, Lyndon Harris, saw him in the dressing room and said, "No visitors in the clubhouse." He was good friends, he was good friends with Dick Allen when he was with the Phillies, and they said Dick Allen and Richie Allen cried when he left. And then he went to the Cardinals. He was great friends with Bob Gibson. Fred was mentioning they did a Team World Series photo. And they had to redo the photo because he and Gibson were holding hands and smiling. And they didn't notice it until after they put it up. He didn't get to play the '64 World Series. He mentioned that the ball game he announced with Joe Morgan in the '90s. He said, "Yeah, I had hepatitis. I couldn't play. I was on the injured list." He said, "How did you get it?" He said, "Well, the trainer injected me." And let's see. And he had a lifetime average of 200, which he said was the same as another great Hall of Famer, Don Carter, who was a bowler back in. And that's about all I got. He once caught a game where Joe Negro pitched against Phil Negro. Their parents were there. And he said he saw them more, the Negro parents, during the game than their sons did, because he was always going back to pick the ball up and home his ticket. And they would wait to him. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mike. Hey Herb, did you print off enough of those ballots where everybody could write on the back of it if they need to?
Yeah, there's still plenty of.
Okay, all right, so Kyle Camperbeck, who actually won the trivia contest, gave us two options. And in the interest of time, I think we're going to take the second option. If you want to pass out some paper or something like that. 19 Hall of Famers have won World Series MVP. Name as many as you can. Go. That's it. 19 Hall of Famers have won World Series MVP. Name as many as you can. And the winner gets
Oh, you're Joe. I got the. I think that is a.
Oh, you got this?
Yeah, it's a couple of holes there.
Huh? 19 Hall of Famers have won World Series MVP. Name as many as you can. And Patrick is gracious enough to bring this.
No, you can go. It's either the 23 or 24 class induction company.
Okay.
Let me look at 1932.
Going by some of these names, that sounds about right. Patrick brought this National Baseball Hall of Fame induction glass from 2023. It is Fred McGriff and Scott Rowland. So this is for the winner. John has his glasses and wallet on the other gift.
Yeah.
I have a SABR published a book a couple of years ago. Maybe y'all have seen it. I'm sure you have. Dome Sweet Dome. History and highlights from 35 years of the Astrodome. I wrote a couple articles in here. The winner can get this. If you don't have a physical copy, you can have this. So I'll save that for later. Here you go. Give y'all about 5-10 minutes. So we can get out of here. Mike, every time you talk, I feel like I learned a little bit more about the Astros. Does anybody in here have a story about the Astrodome they want to share while this is going on? Anybody? Herb, you got an Astrodome story?
Joe, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
This is Francis Kinlaw in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm on the Zoom. I just want to say I'm appreciative, just as one of the other people said earlier tonight on Zoom, that I appreciate very much your putting this on Zoom. It was a very informative program, and I'm particularly grateful to you for doing that.
Hey, well, you're welcome. You know, anything I can do to help get that message out that we need to save the dome. So.
You in North Carolina?
Herb, you got a story?
Yeah, I have a story. It kind of came to me while we were at the Fan Fest. And Joe was asking people about all their stories. And one that came back to me was, and I know the date because my first wedding was on, now I forgot that date. May 23rd, 1987. So the night before that, we had a wedding party in the Skybox on May 22nd. About the only thing I remember from the game was that Nolan Ryan was pitching, and we had the Skybox. Our family provided beer and wine. But the skybox next to us had mixed drinks and shots and all that stuff. So the brother-in-law of a good friend of mine kept sneaking over there to the other skybox and bringing shots for me. So I don't remember much of the game.
Remember the wedding?
I remember the wedding. I had a hangover in the morning. The wedding wasn't until night. So that but then afterwards, they decided I needed a bachelor party, so we went to one of these strip clubs. And I think I was sicker than I've ever been from drinking in my life. So I don't have a whole lot of memory of the dome, and I do have a memory of that.
Well, that's a heck of an Astrodome story. Remember Nolan Ryan.
We got a look her hand up on the Zoom call.
All right, go ahead. Who had their hand up on the Zoom call? You have a story real quick?
Yes, I did. Dixie Taranjo near Fenway Park. Unfortunately, I only saw one game ever at the Astrodome because of where I live. But fortunately, it was the 1000th game at the Astrodome. And when everybody walked into the game, they gave out certificates, which I had signed by Larry Durker at the SABR convention there 10 years ago.
Oh, you go. Do you remember who played the game?
No.
Besides you.
I'm pretty sure the Astros won a very small. It was only a couple days after Durker, I think, threw his no-hitter.
76, something like that?
Yeah, about then, yes.
Okay. Cool. All right, thanks. Okay, y'all ready for the answers? Whatever. All right. Okay, the answers are 19 Hall of Famers have won World Series MVP. Name as many as you can. Whitey Ford, Sandy Koufax, Bob Gibson, Frank Robinson, Brooks Robinson, Roberto Clemente, Reggie Jackson, Raleigh Fingers, Johnny Bench, Willie Stargell, Mike Schmidt, Alan Trammell, Jack Morris, Paul Molitor, Tom Glavine, Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter, Randy Johnson, and Big Papi, David Ortiz.
No Babe Ruth?
No Babe Ruth done. Do I need to go through the list again?
Yeah.
Whitey Ford, Sandy Koufax, Bob Gibson, Frank Robinson, Brooks Robinson, Roberto Clemente, Reggie Jackson, Raleigh Fingers, Johnny Bench, Willie Stargell, Mike Schmidt, Alan Trammell, Jack Morris, Paul Molitor, Tom Glavine, Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter, Randy Johnson, and Big Poppy. Okay, good word for you. Huh?
No.
No Yogi Bear.
You didn't say Joe Mark.
He did say Joe Morgan. All right. John, what'd you get? 10, 15?
No, I got 5.
5? Anybody get more than 5?
Oh, no.
I had 9.
Oh, good.
Patrick had 9. So Patrick, congratulations.
That helps.
Patrick, congratulations. You won the glass that you brought.
I know you got one myself.
No.
Take the book. I wrote a
You want the Dome Sweet Dome book? Okay. There you go, sir. Anybody have more than 9?
all the new guys, Rivera, Ortiz, Randy Johnson. Yeah, those are all the guys I had.
February 17th, Jonathan Goodwin, history of baseball stadiums in Houston. See you then. All right, bye-bye. Thanks again, Mike.
We got,
Oh, we got more books from Tal.